That's all I got.
That's good. Yeah, we could go into a whole lot of things on the Reformation principles of the separation of the church and vestibules and all this kind of stuff, but we won't do that.
The narthex.
Exactly. Yes. So, there was a pastor of a large church that a couple years ago wrote a book called Unqualified around that, something like that. And he would talk about how somebody called him famously unqualified to be a pastor. And he said, and his point of his book was ultimately none of us really are qualified, but God uses the unqualified. Based upon basically saying, no, I don't match up with the list of attributes of a character of a pastor in First Timothy, and nobody really does. And I listened to some studies on that, some responses of that, and Carl Trueman is a theologian and a professor and pastor as well, and he actually responded to that by saying the qualifications for pastors are not like exemplary things that are like impossible to achieve. Instead, they're like basic levels of maturity in Christianity for the most part. They're things that we can all aspire to, and all if we're faithful by God's grace, we can achieve some of that. And so I think how that connects to raising up the next generations, as see these moral standards in 1 Timothy, Titus, 2 Timothy, Ephesians that are given for an elder as being the bar, as what we want to see in our children in the next generation period. That this isn't just something for the elders, the pastors, but these are the kind of morality that we want to see in general. And then we can talk, if you're living out in that kind of way, we can talk about church leadership, rather than saying, oh, you're called at 7 years old to be a pastor, and we're not going to ever question that, even if you're not nowhere near as godly as some of the other youth. When you're a teenager. But I think also, and this goes back to our podcast when we talked about studying the text and teaching the meaning of the text, I think one of the main real attribute that's different between qualification that's different between an elder and a deacon is that it says an elder has to rightly handle the word of truth, has to be competent to teach the Bible, has to be a student of Scripture that can teach its meaning from context and from the context of the whole Bible as well. And I think we need to teach our children and our youth to be the kind of people that can do that, regardless of whether or not they become pastors. But then if they do become pastors, if they do become missionaries, they're so very equipped for this important work, rather than thrown into it without having the right qualifications.
I like that. That's really good.
Anyway, so, we hope you listeners, this was posted a couple days before Christmas. And I'm sure you guys are busy in the Christmas spirit and getting everything wrapped finally for Christmas gifts. And we hope that you guys are encouraged this time, that perhaps this lifts up your spirit as you're frustrated with getting that last piece of tape on the wrapping paper. I'm so terrible at that work. And maybe it can uplift your spirits and help you think of the church, God's true people that sometimes are far more messy than wrapping paper can be, but God uses anyway.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Theological Family Ministry Podcast. If you have enjoyed this episode, please give us a review on iTunes and share the podcast with your friends on social media. All new episodes are available to listen to on Stitcher, SoundCloud, YouTube, Spreaker, and iTunes. We hope you have a great week, and join us again every first and third Thursday.